There's a force that sits at the heart of every transformation, every breakthrough, every moment when someone shifts from one reality to another. And it's not willpower. It's not action. It's not even belief, though it's closely related. It's attention. And once you understand why attention is the most powerful tool you have for creating change, everything about your approach to life transforms. Most people spend their entire lives with their attention completely captured by their circumstances. They wake up, they look around, and whatever their reality shows them, that's where their attention goes. That's what fills their awareness, dominates their thoughts, occupies their mental space. Their circumstances control their attention, and they're just reacting to whatever they see. But every person who's created lasting transformation, every teacher who's understood how change actually works, every individual who's shifted their entire life, they all have one thing in common. They learned to control their attention. They developed the ability to direct their awareness deliberately instead of letting circumstances direct it for them. And that's not just focus. That's not just concentration. That's the most powerful skill you can possibly develop. Let me show you why. Before we go any further, you need to understand something fundamental about how real change happens. Because most people think change is about circumstances shifting, about external things rearranging themselves. They think if their bank account changes or their relationship status changes or their job changes, then they've changed. But that's not how it works. All lasting change is a change of consciousness. Not circumstances. Consciousness. Your external reality can shift temporarily through force and effort, but if your consciousness hasn't changed, your reality will eventually shift back. Because circumstances are always, without exception, conforming to consciousness. Which means if you want real change, permanent change, change that actually sticks, you have to change consciousness. And here's where attention becomes everything. The way to change consciousness is to turn your attention away from your present circumstances and place it on feeling like you already have what you desire. This is why attention is so powerful. Because your attention is what's feeding your consciousness. Whatever you give your attention to, that's what becomes real in your consciousness. That's what dominates your internal state. That's what you're identifying with and embodying. When your attention is on your present circumstances, when you're constantly looking at what is, when you're focused on the lack or the problem or the gap between where you are and where you want to be, you're feeding consciousness with lack. You're reinforcing the very state that created your current circumstances. And so nothing changes. You stay stuck in the same consciousness which keeps creating the same reality. But when you turn your attention away from present circumstances and place it on feeling like your desires are already here, you're feeding consciousness with fulfillment. You're embodying a new state. You're identifying with having instead of lacking. And that shift in consciousness, that's what creates the shift in reality. Think about what happens when you don't control your attention. You want abundance, so you look at your bank account. Your attention goes to the low number. That's what fills your awareness. That's what you're focused on. And in that moment, your consciousness is, I don't have enough. That's the state you're in. That's what you're feeding with your attention. And so that consciousness creates more experiences of not having enough. You want love, so you look at your current situation. Your attention goes to being alone. That's what occupies your thoughts. That's what you're aware of. And your consciousness becomes, I'm not loved. That's the state dominating. That's what your attention is reinforcing. And so that consciousness creates more experiences of being alone. In every case, your attention on present circumstances is creating consciousness that matches those circumstances. And that consciousness creates more of the same circumstances. You're stuck in a loop, and attention is what's keeping you there. But when you control your attention, everything changes. You want abundance, but instead of looking at your bank account, you turn your attention to feeling wealthy. You place your awareness on what it feels like to have plenty, to be secure, to be abundant. And in that moment, your consciousness shifts. You're no longer in the state of lack. You're in the state of having. And that consciousness, fed by your attention, starts creating experiences that match. You want love, but instead of focusing on being alone, you turn your attention to feeling cherished. You place your awareness on what it feels like to be valued, to be seen, to be in a beautiful relationship. And your consciousness shifts from, I'm alone, to I'm loved. And that consciousness, reinforced by your attention, creates experiences that match. This is the power of attention. It's the mechanism through which you shift consciousness. And shifting consciousness is the only thing that creates lasting change. Now here's what you need to understand about making this work. You must keep turning your attention away from your present circumstances. This isn't a one-time thing. This isn't something you do once and you're done. Your present circumstances are constantly trying to capture your attention. They're loud. They're persistent. They're right in front of you, demanding to be acknowledged. And every time your attention goes back to them, every time you focus on what is instead of what you're claiming, you're feeding the old consciousness. You're reinforcing the state that created what you're trying to change. So you have to be vigilant. You have to keep redirecting your attention. Throughout your day, moment by moment, you catch yourself when your attention drifts to circumstances, and you deliberately turn it back to feeling like your desires are here right now. Not coming. Not on the way. Here. Now. Already yours. This is the practice. This is the work. Constantly redirecting attention from what is to what you're claiming to be true. From present circumstances to fulfilled desires. From consciousness of lack to consciousness of having. And here's what's crucial. Your feeling is key. You cannot do this robotically. You cannot just mechanically redirect your attention without actually generating the feeling of having what you desire. Because consciousness isn't changed by thoughts alone. It's changed by feeling, by emotional conviction, by the lived experience of being someone who has what you want. When you turn your attention to your desire, you have to actually feel it. Feel what it's like to be abundant. Feel the relief, the security, the ease. Feel what it's like to be loved. Feel the warmth, the safety, the joy. Don't just think about it. Don't just visualize it. Feel it in your body, in your being, in your state. Because that feeling is what impresses consciousness. That feeling is what creates the shift. That feeling is what your attention needs to be generating, feeding, reinforcing constantly. Someone who understands this, someone who's mastered the use of attention, they operate completely differently. Throughout their day, their attention isn't on circumstances. It's on feeling. They're constantly placing their awareness on the feeling of already having what they desire. And when circumstances try to pull their attention back, when reality demands to be looked at, they consciously turn away and return to the feeling. They're not in denial. They're not pretending circumstances don't exist. They're just refusing to feed those circumstances with their attention. They're refusing to let their attention create consciousness that perpetuates what they're trying to change. So here's what I want you to understand. Attention is powerful because it's the tool through which you change consciousness. And changing consciousness is the only way to create lasting change. Your circumstances will always conform to your consciousness eventually. So if you want different circumstances, you need different consciousness. And if you want different consciousness, you need to control your attention. Stop letting your present circumstances capture your attention. Stop feeding them with your awareness. Stop giving them the power of your focus. Instead, turn your attention to feeling like you already have what you desire. Place your awareness on the consciousness of having, not lacking. Generate the feeling of fulfillment, not emptiness. Do that consistently, relentlessly throughout your day, and your consciousness will shift. And when your consciousness shifts, your reality has no choice but to eventually shift to match. This is why attention is powerful. Master it, and you master your ability to create lasting change.